Hello, everyone. This is the voice of AJ Maestas. For those of you I have not met, I'm the president at Navigate Research. Thank you for joining our webinar today, where our panel will be discussing the ways in which brand marketers are using research and measurement to drive activation strategies. We will focus on best practices, industry trends, and will highlight ways in which these brands are connecting with their target customers through sports and entertainment. As a quick administrative heads up, we will attempt to answer audience questions at the end of the hour, so please feel free to submit questions by way of the chat box you'll find at the bottom of the control panel. The arrow in the upper right of your screen should expand and collapse that control panel and that chat box. Thank you to all those who have already submitted questions in advance. Well, certainly today's webinar is not solely about Navigate, but for some quick background, we are a research and measurement firm dedicated to the sports and entertainment industry. Our brand and agency clients use our insights to guide spending decisions of more than $600 million each year, and sellers have used our services to evaluate over $2.5 billion of transactions in just the last couple of years. Our research arms brands with the insights needed to craft and refine their activation strategies and overall investment decision making. In my opinion, research not only helps you understand what is and is not working from a sponsorship perspective, but it also helps you drive your strategy moving forward to reach and influence that target customer, as well as ultimately amplify the return on investment. So as you can see on your screen now from a sampling of our clients, we work with brands such as Southwest Airlines, Red Bull, Office Max, as well as the folks joining us today, including numerous agencies and sellers ranging from Wasserman Media Group, the marketing arm, GMR, IMG, Paragon, to the NFL League Office, MLS, even broadcasters like ESPN. With that, I'd like to begin by introducing today's panelists. Our first panelist is Kurt Hunzeker. Kurt leads brand marketing for Rawlings Sporting Goods Company. With more than 14 years of experience, Kurt has forged a reputation based on nowhere near the box type creativity and solutions-oriented entrepreneurial mindset. Kurt manages global growth for the 126-year-old brand, Rawlings again, connecting it with next-level athletes and properties worldwide. It's not easy to combine that kind of creativity with a legacy brand like Rawlings. We're proud to say that we work with Rawlings and Kurt, obviously. Especially, when he finds himself traveling the world, he's often in places like Japan. So this isn't just a U.S. initiative for Kurt and his team. Our next panelist is Ryan Maloney. Ryan leads PlayStation's strategic partnership team with a focus on music, sports, and lifestyle partnerships. Ryan's responsibilities include the strategic planning and program development for PlayStation sponsorships and experiential marketing activations. Prior to PlayStation, he worked at Octagon managing Sprint's NFL partnership. Ryan has his MBA from the Warsaw Sports Marketing Center at Oregon and an undergraduate degree from UC Santa Barbara. Lucky man. That's paradise. Our third panelist is Chuck Browning. Chuck heads up sponsorships and corporate giving for Farmers Insurance. Some of their current investments include the Farmers Open PGA Tournament, an integrated NASCAR investment, Farmers Field for when the NFL actually gets out there to LA, and the country rock band Rascal Flatts. An interesting side note, he was recently appointed to the Board of Trustees for the Zurich Foundation. Congratulations, Chuck.
Thank you.
I'm proud to say that all three of today's panelists are current Navigate clients and have embraced research to help guide their strategy, activation, and investment decisions. With that, I'd like to jump right into our conversation with our panelists, and I'm hoping for these first couple of questions actually to hear from all three of you. In order to understand your activation efforts, can you provide a brief overview of your sponsorship portfolios? Kurt, maybe we could start with you.
Really, for Rawlings, sponsorship may not be the exact right term. We have predominantly player advisory contracts, our Major League Baseball glove and bat endorsers, as well as official equipment adoption agreements, such as being the official batting helmet and ball supplier of Major League Baseball, the official baseball of the NCAA, and hundreds of other organizations, Babe Ruth League, Perfect Game USA, a lot of state adoptions where Rawlings is official ball or football, baseball or football or basketball. So when you look at sponsorships, that's really where we live most of the time. We do have individual team deals with Major League Baseball teams, but predominantly it's more along the lines of those player endorsement deals.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And Ryan, do you mind giving us a quick overview of Sony PlayStation's investments?
Yeah, so our recent portfolio has been focused in music partnerships with tentpole events like Coachella and Lollapalooza, as well as event-related partnerships at smaller kind of tier 2 music festivals, along with competitive gaming sponsorships with Major League Gaming and Virgin Gaming, along with a handful of home market sports team sponsorships that are really focused on employee engagement in our headquarters market here in San Francisco.
All right, thank you. And Chuck, I kind of stole your thunder there, didn't I, by listing a bunch of your major investments. Maybe, Chuck, you can kind of segue into our next question as you share what farmers invest in. I'd also love to know how you're activating these partnerships. What are the main drivers behind that strategy?
Yeah, so great, AJ, thanks, and happy to be here. So, as AJ talked about, we have a relationship with the PGA Tour. We are endeavoring to bring football back to Los Angeles with a partnership with AEG and a naming rights deal. Anticipating exactly where that's going over the next 5 years, but we are hopeful to have a shovel in the ground next year. We also have a relationship with the Tournament of Roses, where we have been there for 54 years as the exclusive insurance partner to roll a float down Colorado Boulevard. And then as we go into NASCAR, NASCAR is an interesting sport where you can actually buy your way into several elements. We actually chose to partner with a team in Hendrick Motorsports and then have a specific driver, Casey Kane, who drives the Farmers Insurance number 5 for 22 races of the 36 race season. As we think about these sponsorships and how it is that we actually activate, it really is just try to get in front of the consumer in any way possible, whether it's literally at the event and doing kind of the face-to-face consumer integration, where you're really just trying to tell a story, build a brand awareness. You're kind of feeding the top of the funnel, which is really just trying to drive awareness of your brand. Farmers has been called kind of a sleeping giant over this last 5 to 10 years, because we've really just started to try to identify where there are big fan base consumers and literally partnering with some of that, where we can tell our story of what it is that we do on a daily basis. And we're willing to activate and integrate with those consumers any way possible. We have a huge social and digital strategy that has been driven out across all these platforms. And actually, I'd love to give the kudos to Navigate, who has actually helped us to identify some of those insights around how it is that, rather than go into the big pool and fight dog-eat-dog with some very large competitors in our space, how can we find some of these niche consumer activation opportunities that might not be as costly as traditional media and purchases that way. Going back to the portfolio a little bit, we also have an agency system, which are independent business owners, about 14,000 of them across the country. So we try to support them with their marketing efforts as well. So it's not just all of our corporate spending that we do to help drive the brand of farmers, but also what can we do to support our local agents, which are also representatives of our brand as well. So.
Yeah, and that's a common story in places like financial services and insurance. That is not easy, right? When you have almost 2 constituencies or two user groups that you're marketing to, as well as trying to drive revenue with. That's not so dissimilar than what Ryan has to deal with at Sony PlayStation. Ryan, do you mind me asking you that same question? How do you activate your partnerships, and what are the main drivers behind that strategy?
Yeah, so historically, we have activated our partnerships on an event-by-event basis with on-site brand activation, social media integration, and then media placements that are endemic to the various properties. And that's something we're currently taking a look at and reevaluating of on how to create a deeper level of integration across our different event properties to maximize the value of our investments. and our strategy is really to build momentum for our brand in either places or partnerships or events that are culturally relevant to our best consumers. And we look at properties that give us an opportunity to, win on the ground and also kind of create immersive product experiences for our loyal gamers. AJ, are you on mute?
I am. I apologize. Yeah, Kurt, your business is obviously very different, and truly endemic to the sport. I'd love for you to share with everybody how you activate your partnerships and what your main drivers are as far as strategy.
Yeah, we are very different in that I'm only really trying to reach the 3 million players that are currently playing baseball in the U.S. Now, you did mention, right? I mean, it's there's an internal joke that has kind of caught wind at a lot of industry events where, a lot of the footwear companies out there, if I was sitting next to my counterpart at those companies at a ball game, and someone asks the question, well, what do you guys do? And they're like, well, see the 45,000 people in the stands, I market to those people. And my response would be, well, see those 9 guys in the field and the 1 guy batting? That's me. That's where I focus. So it's very different. We're not really a lifestyle brand. You're not buying a glove and not doing anything with it. You're using it. You're playing with it, whether it's the most simple form of baseball, playing catch, or if you're part of a team and you participate in the sport actively. So, for us to activate the partnership, really the players do it for us. To turn on any game, you're going to see our brand. We are baseball. I mean, being the official baseball of baseball, our brand, every single Major League Baseball player touches our brand every single night. So to activate it, it's really on the fields. Whether it's the cathedrals of Major League Baseball or sandlots in every single community across really the globe. That's where we activate our players. That's where we drive home our brand message of being the mark of a pro. The very best athletes in the world use our products, and that resonates. That authenticity resonates with consumers, and it has since our very beginning in 1877.
Well, Kurt, if I could stick with you for a second, how do you, if you could share some of the outcomes from these investments, specifically being biased to my world, I'd love for you to share how you measure success.
Well, the ultimate ROI is an increase in sales, and a lot goes into how do we do that. So, and I think the greatest thing that we have had working with Navigate is actually kind of twofold. One was evaluation of our players. We had a belief of what was and what positions were the best ones to focus in on, and we have an internal philosophy of the guys that we want to sign. And that was some areas, most areas were validated by the research we did, and some other ones opened our eyes. I think the best thing about it was we were able to do a much better job of evaluating what those players do for us by being on TV every night, kind of like the, not really like a static, but just by being a Rawlings endorser, there's great value in that because they're on TV, and obviously a guy like Yadier Molina and any catcher, they're a billboard that's on TV for an hour plus, depending on if they're starters or not. At the same time, I think one of the things that jumped out at us is really the players that are focused in on during telecast. And seemingly the younger, I mean, you see this brand new wave of young superstars in Major League Baseball, the Mike Trouts, the Bryce Harpers, the Manny Machados, are really taking a lot of the TV time away from the Albert Pujolses of the world. And that really, and you combine that with what, some other just basic consumer insights and grassroots and focus groups and surveys that we do with our next level end user consumer, and that's really telling us who we need to focus in on to sell more product. Who are the guys that can drive the brand best with these next level consumers? So, we have had a pretty significant shift on how we present our players. It's not just a picture of them and you put it up on a point-of-sale box. It's very much, taking those young guys, that's very close in age to that consumer that we're trying to reach, and engaging them and integrating them in our social media plans. And they're very open to it. I mean, I think it's the best thing about using the young players today that have kind of grown up with social media, so to speak, in the last 5+ years, is that they know how to use it. Trying to use maybe a veteran player and activate them in social media where they're very hesitant, or they frankly may not be the ones posting. They have someone else from their agent's office that are posting their thoughts for them. That doesn't move the needle anymore. It's getting those players and engaging it, so we're almost the conduit, the media vehicle that connects our advisory players with those end user consumers that are considering Rawlings in their next equipment purchase decision. So that is really what's been driving the ROI is ultimately the sales, and we do track just about everything that we do. So having that valuation and which players are quote-unquote worth the most to us has been a tremendous help.
So with you living in St. Louis and your headquarters in St. Louis, when Pujols leaves the Cardinals and heads west, it didn't affect how you care or feel about him, huh? The company had no issues?
No, not really. I mean, the company was probably more ecstatic just because of the number of consumers you reach. I mean, you look at, and we just did a massive project of looking at the 40-man rosters of every Major League Baseball team. Well over 70% come from California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. So that's a target-rich environment. So you would want, we were welcome to it. Now, being a St. Louis Cardinal fan, it stung, but at the same time, you look at how the Cardinals kind of replenish. It's just like how the Yankees are starting to replenish. It's very much driven by the young stars. And if you were to ask who are the guys that can sell jerseys and whatnot, you're looking at the Harpers, Trouts, Machados, Harveys, Wheelers of the world, the guys who are up and coming, because those are the ones that are closest to that target market you're trying to reach.
I like that when a story is not that intuitive, because from the outside someone would say, well, your most important endorsees are the most famous, most visible guys, but that makes great sense. You're making money off selling gloves to Little League kids, and there's more baseball in those Sun Belt states. Ryan, if I can ask you that same question, are you able to share some of the outcomes from your activation and investment strategy, and if you're able to share how you measure success?
Yeah, there's kind of two main pillars when we look at our ROI, and one is brand health metrics, which we track our event-specific research back against a national brand tracker with a focus on brand awareness, consideration, advocacy, and brand loyalty. And across those various metrics, we typically see anywhere between a 5 and 10% lift with consumers that we interact with through our sponsorships and events. And then the other pillar that we look at are event-specific metrics and ROI. And over the past year, we've had 287 activation days and had almost 500,000 consumers kind of walk through our door and play with our product 650,000 times. And we look at each of those events on an event-by-event basis and measure the ROI on a cost per experience and cost per activation to allow us to make smart decisions about which events are driving our ROI, along with our brand health metrics. And we see a little bit of variance with the different types of properties. We get different results from our sports team partnerships here in the local market that are really driven by a media value impression versus a music festival or an experiential activation that are really driven by that hands-on immersive gaming experience with our products.
Right. No, that makes sense. And you have a nice portfolio mix. I think that most people in the world of sponsorships think sports only. There's a nice mix of community, lifestyle, events, sports, etc., music. Chuck, if you don't mind me asking you that question as well, can you share some of the outcomes from your activation strategy, how it's changed over time, maybe even highlighting how you measure success?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I would say everything that Ryan said, because I think that we do the health metrics as well, and then we literally measure that against, kind of a brand tracker, really trying to drive a few things. Certainly there's the awareness and consideration piece, but then we also spend a lot of time around the sentiment of farmers, and a lot of the research that you have helped create with us has really driven out exactly how people are feeling. So it's not just about how they feel about the brand, but it's also about, are we seeing lifts on an annual kind of year-over-year basis? Golf is an interesting one. You are literally only doing it, for kind of 1 week out of the year, but you're trying to actually extend, the reach of that, of that particular sponsorship across the other 51 weeks of the year. And we do see that that is a struggle for us, as kind of indicated on this slide. But, we also pay attention to the TV ratings and all the obvious stuff. We do spend some time with Replicom just from a standpoint of how much is that brand and the iconography of farmers being picked up, so how many eyeballs are we in front of. And then we've actually even used this research to help us identify, should we also then go on to extend a relationship, kind of a little bit deeper into the world of golf, through a player. So just recently we did a deal with Ricky Fowler, where we put our hat on his, our logo on his hat, and that has worked out very well. So we're hoping to see that maybe that helps to drive out just, or even amplify everything that we're trying to do in golf. And then, certainly as you can see, what we call the Tiger effect. There's no doubt that in the world of golf, that when Tiger Woods plays your event, you're actually going to see an incredible lift. And this year was particularly interesting because we had no golf on Saturday because we were completely fogged out, so we had to extend the tournament on to Monday. First time ever that NBC Sports extended coverage on to Monday, and only because Tiger was at the top of our leaderboard. So, you have to, it kind of creates a false sense of result. So you really have to kind of pay attention to the Tiger effect and the years that he plays and the years that he doesn't play. But we also let the research kind of drive that out. And you can also see from this slide that we literally kind of do some waves of research. So we're trying to kind of do things before and after the event. And then we actually have even talked about, trying to do it kind of off schedule, which is going into that wave 3, kind of the October time frame, just to see how people, are they even still registering that Farmers is in the golf space. And we try to do that just trying to spread out some of our media buy behind the golf tournament as well. So we don't just play all of the commercials that are embedded in the media segment of our entitlement. It really is kind of spread out over the whole year. So.
Right. No, makes sense. And obviously for the audience, so, we work with Chuck on this, but it's difficult. I mean, the whole team here at Navigate realizes that research is not the end-all, be-all. We're certainly passionate about what we do and proud about our contribution, but there's sort of this, there's a mix of your intuition as a marketer and measurable outcomes or insights into what works and doesn't. Chuck, let me actually ask you that question if I could stay with you for a second. How do you strike that balance between research and insights and the intuition and risk-taking that often makes for a great marketer? How do you balance those two things in planning your activation and strategy?
Yeah, so I think it's all guideline, right? I mean, it's just you have to kind of have a mix of a little bit of everything. So there's the research that guides you. There's kind of the internal brand metrics and other things that we might have that we're not paying or not partnering with Navigate on, and then it really is that intuition. Certainly, there's also just the fact that there are passion points in and around your organization where some people care about it more than others, and yet you have to balance it all. I don't think that we look at the research as just the only indicator. We have some proprietary models that we build that try to drive out from pieces of research and putting that, through a model that kind of spits out a, some other level of measurement for us. But to your point, AJ, it's not a perfect world. And I think as much as you can convince leadership around you, and that when you go into those decision-making processes around, continuance of a sponsorship that's currently in your portfolio, or that something else new that you're looking at, it has to be those 4 or 5 elements that come together that drive your decision. And the research is incredibly insightful, but it's not, it can't be everything. Just because sponsorship is one of those that's constantly, under a pretty large magnifying glass. It costs a lot of money to play here. You have to be incredibly selective. You're trying to do it in, in our case, a very competitive landscape. Everybody's looking for a place where, our competitors are not playing. And then you just let the, your intuition, the measurement, the research, and anything that you can hang on it guide your decisions. So.
That's well said. That's well said. Thank you, Chuck. And, Ryan, if I could ask you that same question. At Sony PlayStation, what have you learned from research and insights? How has that guided your activation strategy going forward?
Yeah, our work with Navigate was, instrumental for us into developing our strategy, kind of moving forward, as well as kind of defining the role of sponsorships and experiential marketing within the marketing mix. And it was really helpful for us to kind of take a step back and look at our portfolio, and through the research identify who we were speaking to with our various types of sponsorships, which allowed us to identify kind of key strategic pillars for us from a partnership perspective, which we use as our kind of upfront guiding strategy. And then, it does become a little bit of intuition when we're evaluating properties within those pillars on what's the best fit for the business. And then, some of the larger partnerships we look at, we do look at, in that kind of sales process, bringing in some valuation on the assets to, ensure we're maximizing our investment. And then it kind of all ends again with research, so we can constantly measure and monitor our various programs and make improvements within the term of the relationship, as these are often, multi-year engagements.
Oh, that's helpful. That's smart stuff. I'm biased, but again, smart stuff. Kurt, you already gave us a little bit of a teaser with, you recognizing where your product sold and where the profit lies. Anything else you could add to that on ways that you've married research with, your strategy of activation and promotion?
Well, I think research has also, and very accurately told us what that purchasing decision process is with our end user consumer. I mean, the brand awareness and the brand power and strength are pretty relevant with this end user consumer. We don't have to spend the millions of dollars to say that we're a baseball brand. They see it on TV. You have that instant authenticity. Go to Major League Baseball's website, and every single ball in there, and every collector. I mean, Rawlings is a very well-known name. So for us, it's we know that side works, but how can we drive the consumer off of that, and learning of where they do their research on specific product lines, and then how do they test them or trial them, and then ultimately where do they buy them? I mean, we have a very clear roadmap, and it's with all the different segments. I mean, you have your entry-level players, you have your youth travel ball, then you have your elite next-level players. They're all different paths of how they get from point A to ultimate purchase point B. But we know how to track all that, so we can deliver them with the right message at the right time every time. And that's something that without research, we'd be throwing darts at it and praying for the best.
Well, it's kind of you to say about research. You know, in our research on different activation methodologies, we've found incredible impact metrics coming off of social and digital media. One of the beautiful things about social and digital media is certainly research can you, let's say, laser focus or guide, on target these type of investments. You can have a one-on-one conversation with consumers through digital. So if I could stick with you for a sec, Kurt, how has Rawlings, what has your experience been activating with digital assets, and what is the return, or are you seeing decent measures out of that?
Well, I'll be honest and say I think we're lagging in this area. And, for the longest time, our distribution or our sales channels really were predicated with the independent, what we call the independent team dealers in a lot of different communities across the country. Then you have your national retailers like a Dick's Sporting Goods and the Sports Authority. And then you have your internet catalogers like the East Bays, Baseball Expresses of the world. That's really kind of been the three-pronged sales strategy, or the three-pronged channel strategy that we've had. The dynamics are shifting. Like if you're talking about coaches, where do they do most of their purchasing? That's on that independent team dealer. It's very much consumer or customer service oriented. If you're looking at that end user consumer, where buying anything on their mobile devices is no big deal, and they can search for a better price that way, that's where the new battleground is in any industry, not just sporting goods. So we are rapidly, and I mean rapidly, changing the culture here as far as where we've dedicated a lot of co-op marketing dollars with retailers, really where the focus has been in driving consumers, where it's been almost predominantly the brick and mortar stores to more of the bricks and clicks. And then ultimately, a lot of places are clicks only. Baseball bats, aluminum bats, for example, are predominantly an online buy for a lot of consumers just because they can price shop. They'll test it out at a store or an event where you can, kind of like at golf clubs, you can test them out. They'll test out a bat, but then ultimately they want to buy it. They'll buy it online. And so that has really altered the way that we do business. And direct-to-consumer is big. It's finally becoming big in our industry, and that's something that we're driving towards right now.
Right. No, that's smart. And Ryan, can I ask you that same question at Sony PlayStation? What are you seeing? What are your outcomes? How are you measuring those digital assets?
Yeah, from our perspective across our partnerships and activations, we're extremely fortunate. We have an extremely loyal and engaged community across our kind of own social media channels. We're a top 10 brand globally on Facebook, YouTube, I think Twitter. So we have a great opportunity to speak to our community and promote our events, and it really allows us to drive traffic to any of our own experiential activations, whether it's a pop-up store or a college campus activation in a simple and efficient way. And from a tracking perspective, during the event we also track engagement numbers, and social is integrated into all of our activations, from on-site promotions to pre-event sweepstakes to exclusive offers with the various properties. And it really is a way for us to help kind of maximize the reach of our programs. Is I think everybody's aware that friends of friends and see our posts, and it's a great way for us to kind of build momentum for our partnerships. And this is something we've just started kind of dipping our toes in from a partnership perspective over the past year, and I anticipate seeing deeper digital entertainment experiences tied to our partnerships moving forward.
Well, it certainly fits your business. I've got to think that it's in line with selling titles and even the future of consoles. A lot of people in the technology world consider box top sets from the Sony PlayStations of the world to be a real threat to the way people consume entertainment, even threat to cable providers and so forth and so on. You know, Chuck, let me ask you this. It's a very difficult to navigate the digital space in the insurance world, especially given the long sales cycle and the relationship you have with your customers. Is there anything from your experience in activating from a digital perspective you could share, and maybe even some success outcomes? I know I've loved some of the viral videos you've done.
Yeah. So I think I agree both with Kurt and Ryan, especially, you know, from a, I think you have to be all in on digital. So there's a few reasons for it. One, you know, it's a lot cheaper than traditional. So, you know, certainly that's something that pleases, you know, all your financial constituents inside your organizations. Two, I think legal is trying to still figure out exactly what it is they should have issues with regards to social and digital play. So I think we all have a little bit of a leg up, because until somebody starts to figure this out, you know, right now they're saying yes more than they're saying no. And then, you know, I think it's really all the spaces that we think about, from the Facebooks, the Twitters, and everything that you can kind of push out there. Farmers is all in on it, because we've recently just hired the head of digital strategy away from Yahoo, who's recently joined us. So we are very serious about, you know, being in this space and being in that space very well, to the point of, you know, I think the other thing that social and digital does for you is it allows you to experiment. You know, I don't think consumers are that hung up on the fact that you go out and screw something up because, you know, wait a few seconds and it moves down in a Twitter feed, or, you know, it's, people have kind of forgotten it in the Facebook space. But you certainly want to be there, because, you know, one, if you look at our space, you know, Progressive, Nationwide, State Farm, Geico, you know, Allstate, everybody's playing there, and they're playing very seriously. So part of it is a defensive posture for us, but part of it is, you know, if they're doing it, we certainly want to be doing it as well. And then to the point of that you talked about, AJ, we have really been experimenting with some webisodes. So in the golf space, we just worked with Ricky Fowler, and I won't completely give it away, but we'll be launching a series of webisodes that kind of put Ricky in a very comedic, but also in the golf space, so that if you are a PGA Tour fan or you follow golf at all and you like Ricky at all, you're going to see him kind of in a fun, you know, very comedic way. And oh, by the way, Farmers, this is all being brought to you by Farmers Insurance. You know, we have our driver, Casey Kane. I brought Casey Kane and Ricky Fowler together about a year ago at our golf tournament, and realized that there was really kind of a good chemistry there. So we just kind of pushed out another, we kind of did a media deal where we called it Drive and Drive. So we met in Charlotte and brought them both together and just had the media follow us around, where, you know, Casey was teaching Ricky how to drive a little go-kart, and, you know, Ricky was teaching Casey how to hit a golf ball, and really stayed there for 5.5 hours and had, you know, media outlets literally following us around, but the Twitter activity and the Facebook activity was off the charts. So a lot of it is just, you know, it's the clicks. A lot of it is how many people are viewing it. A lot of it is how many people are liking what you're doing, how many people are now friends with your brand that weren't brand friendly before. And then certainly there's a lot of work going on behind the, you know, the independent agent system, and our sales agents that are out in the field, where we're encouraging them to interact with their consumer, you know, their customer via these technologies. You know, and I think we all just ask, you know, I always talk to my team about the fact that, forget you're an insurance professional today, how are you consuming information? So you need to think about that when you plan your daily activities. And, you know, literally some of the research that you're providing and supporting for us is literally help calling out that these are spaces where every brand needs to play. And, you know, how deep or how much money or how much resource you apply to it, I think is the big question. So
that's really cool stuff, Chuck. You know, those are some bright young personalities. They're visible. That might be a lightning in the bottle type moment. Definitely, for those in the audience, keep your eyes out for that campaign. There's already some really cool stuff out there using Ricky Fowler in particular, whether it's Farmers or otherwise. Just some really cool stuff to capture things that they're kind of doing naturally anyway that fit their personality. I'm really proud of the work that we've actually done with farmers insurance overall. Just in the last couple of years, I feel like our timing was a great match-up with changes taking place in the organization and efforts they've made, not just with what they do on the sponsorship team in Chuck's world, but also what they do with media. I'm guessing everybody on the call right now probably recognizes the Farmers University campaign. There's sort of a consistent spokesperson theme, music. It's just something that's a lot more visible, especially for a brand that is not technically selling insurance nationally than ever existed before. Chuck, if I can ask you that, can you share how effective your sponsorship investments are versus traditional media spend? And specifically, how do you determine the balance of sponsorships versus traditional media buy at farmers?
Yeah, I'd love to make it a simple answer, but it's incredibly complicated. I think it's really just kind of a dog-eat-dog fight in the budget process. The good news is my peer, the head of advertising, recognizes that traditional media is shifting. And to the point that you made about Ryan and the PlayStation, we're literally looking at trends that tell us that these platforms are going to start to be threats to people coming home and watching, or that people are sitting on their couches and they've got their iPads in their laps while they're consuming television, and at some point something's going to win. Today, this is a conversation that we have literally every week. What is the proper balance behind your overall marketing spend? How much are you spending in traditional TV and radio and print versus how much you're spending in sponsorships? And I think Kurt or Ryan pointed to the fact that the difficulty in doing this is that most of the time when you're forming these sponsorships, you're doing a multi-year deal. So part of it is you have to be incredibly committed in the sponsorship world, because unless you're going to get in the habit of breaching contracts because a trend has changed, or digital can outpace you, or direct mail works more effectively, you got to go all in. I would say that we don't completely get there a lot of the times. I don't think that we spend enough money in the activation behind our sponsorships, but that's an opinion, and I've got others around me that can disagree. I do think that we are well balanced today. I think that it will be very interesting as Farmers Field becomes a reality, because we will probably have to rethink how it is this portfolio spread too thin? Is this portfolio, do we need to give up something because we need to go a little more all in on the NFL or NFL support? And the other point that I think I would make, AJ, in this constant balance of what is enough, I really go out of my way to try to make sure that if I am killing a deal or making recommendations that we should walk away from something, or something's changed and we need to give it up, you need to keep those doors open, because if there's anything that I've learned through the many years that I've been in this industry, as well as kind of the marketplace of sponsorships, is that you never really want to make anybody mad, and because you might need to come back to them because something has changed or a trend has been redeveloped. So I really go out of my way that if we are walking away from some relationship, that I'm trying to keep that door open, because I may need to call on it again in a year or 18 months or 24 months or whatever it is. So very difficult to try to say what is the particular proper balance, and I think it's completely different industry to industry. I think it's also completely objectives driven. For us, we're just trying to create a lot of noise around our brand, and that was one strategy when we kind of burst some of the relationships that we have. But now we might be shifting more towards that customer loyalty, or consumer acquisition, or that consideration. In our world, you definitely want to be in the top 3 consideration set. And yet, I would challenge all of you who watch TV on a regular basis, how many insurance commercials can you actually see in one episode of, Modern Family? Because, literally, we're all just trying to be in front of that consumer as frequently as possible. And at some point, it's a little bit, I'll say it's a little bit irritating at times, but, to the point of balance, it's a every week conversation.
Boy, you know, insurance is a tough place to compete. It's a highly fragmented industry. For those that don't know this stuff off the top of your head, there's a dozen players that have between 3% and maybe 10% market share, mostly in the 3, 4, 5% range. So it's different than a lot of hot sponsorship categories where it's highly fragmented, and that means there's a lot of noise, and it's difficult to to put a flag in the ground and actually own a consumer or a segment. No question, no question. You know, also one of the comments I really like that you're discussing is, you know, that need for activation dollars and that mix, you know, that it's touching consumers in all these different ways in aggregate that has a sort of a cumulative effect. I don't think I'm giving anything proprietary away to share with our audience that Navigate has this normative database. It's basically a database on early all the way through late sales funnel behaviors, awareness, consideration, trial, loyalty, purchase, refer, that we track in most of the research we do. And all of those metrics improve when a consumer is basically interacted with in multiple different ways. By that I mean, if you had $1 to spend, it's better to spend 33 cents, you know, through the media support, 33% on rights, 33 cents on you know, activation as an example, and it has a bigger impact than if you'd spent $1 in one place. That's a consistent story we see. This isn't specific to farmers or insurance, but it really does speak to the importance of activation and the fact that, you know, you have to leave dollars over to really, you know, amplify the effect of that investment, to make the most of it. Ryan, at Sony PlayStation, what are some of the differences for you in activating a product? You know, much like Chuck has, he has his broker network, or, you know, salespeople, essentially, let's call it, you know, agents, and then he has his brand that he's concerned about overall. You've got consoles and titles, and I think most people have probably noticed the buzz out there recently that PlayStation 4, PS4 is coming out here soon. So it's a console release year for PlayStation, but most of the time their profit and their efforts are around moving titles. How do you balance that between those two objectives in your activation efforts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, fortunate for us, it is somewhat of it's a closed ecosystem of hardware, software, and, you know, digital entertainment services. So, you know, software is what really brings the hardware to life from an activation perspective. But you know, the overall brand is extremely important for us as well. So we want to make sure that we deliver an immersive gaming experience for consumers that's, you know, that plays well within the PlayStation brand identity, and then, you know, making sure we do provide the depth of software or, you know, relevant service experiences to our consumers, because consumers play all different types of games and hardware. So we always want to make sure we have a mix to promote. And, you know, from the software perspective for us, our events are often the first time that consumers get to play a title, because we're often showcasing products 3 to 6 months before they hit the shelves. So it's really a great way for us to drive traffic and interest around our partnerships. And, you know, this being a hardware launch year, we'll have that same ability with the hardware, as it'll be a first opportunity for consumers to really experience what PlayStation 4 is all about.
Makes sense, makes sense. Kurt, I think you might have touched on this, and this is our last question here before we get to some of the audience questions. How do you bring a brand that is so endemic to sports to life? Like, how do you make Rawlings stand out among the clutter of other, you know, endemic brands? You know, whether it be equipment and apparel like Nike or Gatorade. And I think you've touched on this, so please revisit if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, Rawlings is really synonymous with baseball. You can't play any form of baseball without Rawlings, and that's not an arrogant viewpoint. It's kind of been the reality. We've been around for, I think you mentioned before, 126 years, 1877. We predate, I mean, St. Louis Cardinals. We outdate them here in St. Louis. So, yeah, this brand has really been passed down from generation to generation. So that has allowed us to and we have a very unique ability to link the Manny Machados, Yadier Molinas, Justin Verlanders with the Roberto Clemente, Stan Musials, and Mickey Mantles. The hardest thing that we have in today's day and age is we do get the label of being old school, traditional, and that's something that we fight, but we also don't completely run away from it, because that is a powerful asset to have that the Nikes and the Under Armours and even the Gatorades of the world don't really have. And it's finding that healthy mix of hearkening to your past and this great legendary brand that we have and connecting it with 12 to 18-year-olds. That's not the easy part. That's what we come to work every day to do. So at the end of the day, I think because we are an equipment brand, we actually do help players of all skill levels reach their next level. We know not everybody's going to be a Major League Baseball player. We know that not all kids playing T-ball are going to play varsity someday, but we want them to have fun and we want them to play. And I think a lot of what you'll see us doing here in the next few years is really driving and enabling participation, because in our industry, we look at approximately 5% drop in participation every year in the last 5 years. If you look at some of the big markets that we are activating in now, like Japan, for instance, it's a 13% drop year over year. So there are problems of that 3 million consumer segment that we're trying to reach dwindling, which obviously puts a strain on the entire marketplace, not just our brand. So the more that we can get kids and parents to the simple act of playing catch, right there you get 2 gloves and a ball. That's our starting point. And then obviously utilizing all of the great assets that we have, whether it's the Major League Baseball players, the Rawlings Gold Glove Award itself. That's what we're really starting to bundle together and engaging these consumers. And I think Chuck said before, a lot of different properties, a lot of different ways of reaching them. It's not just while you're watching the game on TV. It's digitally. It's in market. We have a massive presence in Omaha right now for the College World Series. So that's really where the fights can be won for us.
Boy, those are some pretty scary numbers. I hope baseball itself, Major League Baseball, is concerned enough. There's got to be some pretty incredible grassroots opportunities for both you and MLB together to fight that. That's a challenge for sure. And boy, you do a great job of the Gold Gloves, by the way, the Rawlings Gold Glove Awards and what have you. I love that platform. So a couple of questions from the audience we're trying to pull out here. This is kind of a fun one. This is for Chuck, by the way, so brace yourself. How did your company come to the decision to purchase the naming rights for Farmers Field? And for those that didn't get it from the shovel in the ground comment earlier from Chuck, Farmers Field is an AEG vision and dream in conjunction with Farmers Insurance to put a stadium, NFL stadium, in downtown LA that could hold as many as 2 NFL tenants. But there is no shovel on the ground yet. This is a to-be-proposed potential stadium with no tenant yet identified. So if you could share that story, that would be amazing, Chuck.
Yeah, so one that we get asked all the time. I would say that I think it's a little bit of everything. One, it's just networking. You got to constantly network your brand, especially where your businesses are domiciled, and you make relationships and you have conversations at a cocktail reception or at a dinner, and really there was a little bit of that happened. I think there was a little bit of luck that happened. And then literally we met Tim Lewicki in Los Angeles and the AEG partners, and there was just so much commentary going on in Los Angeles anyway behind competing groups, and now there's lots of speculation around the Guggenheim group that came in and saved the Dodgers and the whole McCourt mess. And then you've got the Ed Roskis over in the east side of Los Angeles, and then you've kind of got this AEG thing. The thing that AEG had that we were impressed by was, they had some proof points. They had just, kind of refreshed Staples Center, built Nokia Theater. LA Live was completely redone. So certainly that was very telling to us, as well as we have been domiciled in Los Angeles, California for 85 years. So this is our home. And certainly we saw this as an opportunity to do something that had never been done before. I think as we are interviewed all the time in reference to this, it really boils down to this will be a case study that will be studied forever, regardless of whether Farmers Field even happens at all. The idea that an organization like us would stand up behind just the promise of football to come back to Los Angeles, as and literally the media value of this for us before we even stroke a check has been completely off the charts. So, I'd love to tell you that it was, some well thought out, completely planned, endeavor, but it really wasn't. It really stemmed from, listening and networking and, brainstorming and trying to find a white space, literally doing something in Los Angeles to just completely recommit to our being in Los Angeles. But it's a little messy along the way. It's not just doing a deal with AEG. You've also got to figure the football piece out, and so we're not necessarily at the table with AEG and Roger Goodell and the NFL and all the owners, but we have conducted a weekly call with AEG just for status for the last 3 years, and we're still not there. So it's I could tell you some other things if we weren't a group of 100 people and we were having a glass of wine somewhere, but ultimately this is
right.
It's been an incredible endeavor so far, and we are very, very optimistic and remain completely committed to this thing happening. So.
Well, again, without revealing specific details, I'll tell you, we're already, as you can imagine, in the research we do for farmers, we already are taking the temperature of how people feel about it, and boy, you are getting a lot of noise and even consumer response from that association without cutting a check, perhaps something that could potentially even never happen. We work at Navigate, we probably work on a dozen plus naming rights deals in any given year. And there's a far different connection level when someone's there from the inception, and the only thing that stadium is ever known as is that brand. It's nice to be out front, I guess, of an investment like this. I apologize. We ran a little longer than I intended to, and we have a number of really good questions from the audience. What we're going to do is that the Navigate team will address these offline afterwards here with our panelists and come back with the answers for you that ask these questions, including group questions to the whole audience. But a great discussion, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time and willingness to share these best practices with everyone in the audience today. I'm guessing that I speak for the entire audience when I say that it was a pleasure to listen and learn from you all today, and I wish I could say that all marketers thought and worked like Kurt, Ryan, and Chuck, but because they don't, I'm going to call you thought leaders, and thank you again for joining us today. As far as the audience as a whole, I hope you all found the information shared today valuable, and please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions or feedback. Again, for those questions submitted, someone from the Navigate team will be following up directly with you. Thank you all, and have a great week.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, AJ.
Yeah, thank you.